even more dead Roblox train games. Thanks FNT0 for that name. That's right, we're doing a fourth part. It's time for the return of the legendary Dead Roblox train game series. I know you all loved the previous episodes and I loved making them, so it's time for a fourth episode. This episode will be going into some more obscure games compared to the last one, but they are still pretty interesting nonetheless. So, with all that out of the way, get your hiking gear ready, cameras in place, and wire cutters out, because we're going back to the nostalgic but depressing world of dead Roblox train games. Starting off our list is a game that many of you will remember and one I actually wasn't planning on adding originally. Snow Hill Lines is a train simulator game similar to Terminal Railways or Rails Unlimited. The game began development back in 2018 and for a time it was a very detailed and successful game, racking up over 3 million visits. It would be split into two different games, those being Snow Hill Lines Legacy and Snow Hill Lines Current. It began its decline around 2022 to 2023 and eventually only 12 players could be seen playing it around the time I released my first dead Roblox train game video. Now however, it's completely dead as visits have dropped to basically 0 or 1. I suspect the reason for this is because the development group behind Project Central Group focused all their efforts onto their Croydon London bus simulator and thus Snow Hill Line got left behind and abandoned. These days the game is still quite functional if everything's still working, albeit unless you can find someone in game at the time, you're probably not going to be getting a guard anytime soon. The West Somerset Railway is an NXT-style game created by Bradley Manor in October of 2013. This ancient game is apparently one of the oldest railways on Roblox, and yeah, I can see it. The game is comprised of several engines you can drive, including Thomas, two 4Fs, a 15XX, a Class 121, and a Class 108, I think, along with some rolling stock such as coaches and a few wagons that you can pull around. As of now, the only functional locomotive in game is Thomas, with the rest of them either being stuttering to a stop or suffering switches on curves. I'm not sure how the game died out, but most likely the age and overall decline in NXT probably led to the games ending up dying, although it seems to have been maintained to a somewhat half-functional state. While the game may no longer be like it once used to be in its glory days, it's still somewhat functional and a good reminder of how far Roblox trains have come since then. Coming up next is Dale Railway Station. Dale Railway Station is a game made by Ista007, the same guy who made the Ista miniature game Railway featured in my last video. Dale Railway Station, as its name suggests, is a railway station located in what I assume is a heritage railway? The game was created back in October of 2015 and has two trains in it, those being a small LNWR 040 hauling a single coach and a two-winded Jenny Model T car thing. The 040 is the only operational engine, as the car thing has no seat nor seems to be powered, but as you can imagine from such an ancient game, the steam engine doesn't exactly work that well. I mean, it works, but it moves like 5 inches and then locks up completely. Something I would like to add in here real quick is that I actually discovered that the Jenny Model T two-ended car thing actually does work. There's surprisingly a seat in it. I don't know how I missed this in my initial review or initial look around the game, but yeah, it does have a seat, so it is functional. I think it's more functional in the steam engine, I don't know, the footage will have to tell you. The line is also incredibly short with barely anything past the station, being just a green fields. The game was a test from what I can tell and most likely didn't get too far in development, which is kind of sad because I think it would have been a really cool game if it had been completed. Next up is a state railway by Trains 4427, or as they're more well known as, the creators of Solway 1985. I'll get to that soon. Created in 2020, this small little railway is, as its namesake suggests, an estate railway, although one in pretty rough shape. The game goes in a loop around a grassy hill with several different pieces of equipment lying around, such as old cars or a steam shovel. There's a few wagons you can collect with one of the game's small roster of mainly diesels, with one steam engine. The engines overall run well, but the rolling stock, well, that's another story. The game seems to have been more of a test on making a railway, and probably wasn't planned to be anything big with it having not been updated for over 2 years now. The game, while being a bit small, is certainly jam-packed with so much detail. Overall, is a very pretty cool game. That is, if expanded, could have been something really neat. So for this next section, I'll be including two games instead of one, simply because they're pretty small and pretty similar to one another. Railway and Hemming by Railway are two smaller railway games made by Somerset back in 2020. Railway is a simple railway game consisting of a yard with some rolling stock and a large loop for the trains to go around, while Hemming by Railway is a more detailed, having a full town and overall being more fleshed out. Both games were relatively small and overall made by a div who wasn't really that well known back then, at least I assume, I'm not 100% sure. These games are still both quite functional and are a fun time to check out if you're bored. Yanell Lake Railway is a small heritage railway created by Hearsta in summer of 2015. This relatively short line is a 2-foot line located in what I presume would be Wales or somewhere similar to it. The game has 3 stations, an abandoned quarry along a free hunslet, a few coaches, and some rusty and non-rusting slate wagons. The game is pretty small and most of the engines don't work anymore, unfortunately. The game was last updated in 2022 and since then it has remained incredibly dead. I can assume it died off because, well, there really wasn't much to do on it, and with most of the stock no longer being working, there's really not much you can do these days. Although I do really like this bouncy coach in the back of the shed. Bro's so excited, like, ooh, we're gonna go on a trip, we're gonna go on a trip! Haha, oh, little coach. No, you're not. Solway 1985 is a 2-stud railway made by Trains 4472 and originally began life in 2013 as an 8-stud generic standard gauge NXT railway that only went to Solway station. The line would stay 8-stud until 2016 when Roblox broke all NXT trains due to the infamous physics update that broke most Roblox trains. During this time, Trains' friend Jammy543 really wanted a narrow gauge game to run stuff on along with a shared interest in Welsh Railways, and thus the line would be relayed to 2-stud that year along with being extended to Dalagareth and Charleside later on. The game would have a revitalization during the 2020 lockdowns, but as things returned to normal, running sessions would eventually end. Trains 4472 would move on to work into more physical stuff than Roblox models, and would continue work on Solway 1985. The game today is pretty much fully abandoned, as no running sessions take place, nor do many people play the game anymore, but all the engines are still very functional and do work. Trains 4472 has stated that he doesn't plan to bring back Solway in any new form, but does still write bits of lore now and then, keeping Solway 1985 alive in another form. The Roblox Automated Subway 2 is, as its name suggests, an automated subway system in Roblox. The game was built by Moo and is a sequel to Roblox Automated Subway, although I can't find it anywhere, so I'm assuming it's been taken down. The game is actually a series of different places put together to work in tandem with one another that are connected by teleporting between stations. The game began life back in 2019 and was last updated in 2020. The game overall is surprisingly still functional even after 5 years since the last update. All the trains still run on time and properly with no glitching or even derailments. I'm actually really shocked how well this game held up compared to others. I'm gonna assume its death was most likely due to a lack of anything really to do and changing trends in Roblox train games at the time, moving away from automated stuff. The game is really cool to look back on the era of automated metros, and it's still a fun one to take if you like public transportation. The NXT Transit Blue line is, as the name implies, an NXT Transit line, but in blue. The game was made by the ever-iconic Greg Tame in 2014 and is technically his first ever train game he made even before the Mesh Trainer series covered in the last video. The game takes place in an empty world with 2 blue high-speed trains and a lot of trackage showing it had a lot of places to go. The trains are unlike your conventional NXT train of the time, running on a UI-based system instead of keybinds. The engine can open/close doors, blow horn, switch between forward, neutral, and reverse gears, has light and emergency brakes, and throttle all in one. For a 2014 NXT game, this is surprisingly really advanced at the time, with all the controls being UI based, and honestly the train design is surprisingly really well designed, along with the train sets reminding me a lot of the Plaza subway cars. However, the functionality of such an old game, as you can imagine, is pretty bad. The trains barely work and stutter a lot when accelerating and frequently get stuck and jammed in curves or even on straights. The game for its age is insanely impressive, and back then it would have been a blast to drive, but as of now it's pretty much abandoned and in a pretty poor state. Welsh Railways is a railway located in Wales, I think. The game was made in 2017 by Happy Toshiba 123, the same guy who made Amerton Light Railway. The game has 3 stations, a middle stop where you spawn, a colliery, and a works of some sort. There are 2 steam engines and a diesel. Both steamers don't work, but the diesel does. The game rarely has a bug or something that which after like 2 to 3 minutes of playing, the game just locks up completely and you can't keep playing it anymore. I have no idea why this happens, but I assume it has to do with some feature in game which Roblox broke and caused this to occur. As of Amberton, I really don't know the life of this game, but I can assume the owner most likely just lost interest and moved on to do other things, and thus the game just fell into abandonment. The Grand River Scenic Railroad is a dual-gauge American railroad located in the Southern Railway region of the U.S. railroads. Created by Did-You555 in 2018, this game consists of a standard gauge line and a narrow gauge line going through the mountains and forests of what I can assume is the southern U.S./East Coast mountain ranges. I'm not really sure what this region is called. The railroad is a mainly steam-operated line, but has a few diesels along with a plethora of rolling stock to choose from, but mainly being freight-oriented. The game seemingly was more popular between 2019 and 2022, where it began to die around that time, and nowadays it's pretty much dead. Most likely people just lost interest in these bigger games and moved on to other things. However, the game was updated 5 months ago and everything works perfectly well, so if you want to run some standard gauge summer engines, then this is the game for you. A very row-scale layout is a row-scale game created by Synchronous, the guy behind SteamAge. The game consists of a British-style row-scale game with several sidings, yards, sheds, station, and more. The game was created back in 2018 and last updated in 2023, and since then, the game is pretty much unplayable. While the locomotives are still surprisingly functional, the switches are all broken due to an update that broke every single row-scale game switches and required the devs to manually fix them. However, a very row-scale layout never got that fixed and thus remains broken to this day. I can only assume the success of SteamAge and the switches breaking most likely killed off the game, and as of now, it stands as an interesting development point in Synchronous' time on Roblox. And now, it is time to get into the honorable mentions part where I get to talk about games which are either not fully dead or completely unplayable in their original state. First up is one of the most elusive dead Roblox train games ever, being Moo Railway. Moo Railway was a standard gauge British game created by NER 1310 back in 2017 and was really popular for the time, getting over 100,000 visits in the process. The game seems to have consisted of a branch line with several smaller British engines such as an 060 and an 040 along with several pieces of rolling stock to pull around. The game was open for some time, however NER would close it for an unknown reason and it would never open again. I actually contacted the owner, NER 1310, asking for about more info on Moo Railway, but as of right out of the script, he has yet to respond as it seems to have gone completely offline. Overall, the game from what I've seen in the video sent by my friend Aaron looks like it would have been a really fun time and hopefully one day it'll be reopened. North of the Rails, or as it's now known as Development Halted, was a standard gauge Canadian game focused on Canadian railroading. The game seems to take place around Ontario due to the presence of Go Transit stock. The game was closed up around last year, I think. I'm not actually 100% sure, and it seems that it got shut down for no reason, although I can assume it was most likely due to the devs losing interest. As of now, the game is completely gone, with only evidence of it existing being in the form of these old videos. If anyone has any more info on the game, please tell me in the comments. I'd really like to know more on it. Now here's a game which a lot of you who are subscribed to my channel will know very well. Polar Express Full Train Ride is an OPS game created by Untia50, aka the owner of DG County 2. The game is a recreation of the 2004 Polar Express movie, where the player hops aboard a Polar Express to the North Pole while watching some scenes from the movie play out, albeit without any of the characters. The original game was created and released in 2020 for the Christmas season, however it would be riddled with bugs, including one where the cutscene where the Polar Express goes for the North Pole would freeze some players' games, making it unwatchable. The second and most well-known version would be released on Christmas Eve 2021 and would be the most well-known version of the game. The game would open a few more times in early 2022 before being closed for good for the third iteration. This third one added the actual characters from the 2004 movie in, with more in-depth scenes and voice acting, along with revamping the locations.
Problem solved. All ahead, slow!
However, this version would never see the light of day, as Roblox bug broke the character's rig, meaning only the owner could see them and not the players. Along with tons of other bugs and being built on an ancient foundation, this meant the game could not be released, and thus 2022 came and went with no new Polar Express game. The game has been locked for good and as of now will never reopen, as the systems put in place for it to work have completely broken, and Untia50 isn't planning on remaking the game anytime soon, meaning the only footage of it left is the stuff on YouTube. The Coldfell Railway, as its name implies, is a recreation of the Coldfell Railway from the Railway series. The game was built by Fizzlesting in March of 2022 and last updated about 6 months ago as of the making of this video. The game seems to be pretty accurate recreation to the Coldfell line from the bottom station to Kirk Mansion station all the way up to Coldfell Stone at the top. The game is built using that CBR2 trackage with the trains having similar looking faces as CBR2 and kind of feels a bit free modeling in some places, but has a weird sort of charm to it. The game seems to have a few updates now and then, but overall seems to be somewhat dead, but still getting some players now and then. Global Rails is a railway game series created by Nebula Games, a game group that I maybe have made some videos on. The game is a very stylized type of game, going for shrunken style trains and a more cartoony style than other train games might. The initial game was made in July 2019 and would have several spin-offs including Sub-Zero Valley and Global Rails Revolution, with both being upgrades of the original game. The game would have moderate success, bringing in around 950,000 visits total, but are a lot smaller now than they used to be, as Nebula Games would move on to High Iron, which is now their flagship title. The games are still open and are still functional, having some players on, but not as many as there once was. C2C Full Network is a standard gauge upstyles British game set in the London region, well, I assume due to the inclusion of the London Underground. The game is a pretty massive map, but only includes a single train set, being a BR class 379 or 357/185, according to the description. The game shown here is not the original, as the original game was made by Stuff Loves Things back in 2014, but has since been closed. The account Stuff Loves Things have also been deleted, as it no longer exists, and thus the original game doesn't exist either. However, it's uncopy-like, so you can download it for yourself. I'm not sure why it died, but according to the description of the original game, the owner said, "I forgot how much effort I put into making the complete network, so it's open again. Some things will be different, but there's no longer a group." So it seems that there was once a full group, but now it's gone. As of the current game, it's functional, although the singular train set doesn't run that well and can take some time to get it since it spawns so far away. Now, this is a surprise for sure, and something I did not expect to add in. Narrow Gauge Hills 2.5 is a free drive/OPS game made by Ziploc Bag, and is the updated version of Narrow Gauge Hills 2 that we covered in the first video. The game has been massively upgraded over the years, gaining features such as a brand new spawn menu for rolling stock, and locomotives, revamped locations, revamped engines, a job system, XP, and more. However, even with all these updates, the game has kinda fallen off. The player count is less than it once was a few years, with only like 4 to 5 people playing per day, from what I can tell. I honestly don't know why the game died off like it did, but I can presume most likely the constantly updating game and a glitch with the spawning trains which freeze you in the air requiring you to reset probably didn't help, but I'm not really sure. Also, the nights became much darker than before, and for a bit there was an hour day-night cycle which plunged the game into pitch black darkness, but thankfully it's been fixed. While the game is still being updated and people do still play, it's sadly not as popular as it once was back in 2020/2021, and I don't know if the future holds it favorably, but I hope it still continues to stay alive for years to come, because as this was my second favorite Roblox narrow gauge game back in the day, and in fact was one of the earliest train games I ever played. The Subway Testing Series are a trio of games made by Scenic and are based around the New York City subway system and playing around with the trains. The original game was created back in 2016 and since then has branched off into 3 different games, being Subway Testing Classic, Subway Testing Remastered, and Subway Testing Fan Edition. All 3 games revolve around the New York City subway, and you get to drive these trains around a mini version of New York City. The Remastered Edition, however, expands upon the idea and added the ability to operate buses in a massively improved city. However, all these games are now pretty dead, as only a few people play them compared to before when it was more alive. There are still some players online, but overall the game is far from its old numbers. Tulip Lane Row Scale is a massive row scale game created by Used Bubblehead, who is the same developer behind Retro Western. The game was originally created back in October of 2019, with the last update having been 5 months since the release of this video. The game is set in an unknown region of the world, but I would assume it's a mix between the US and Canada, as the main railroad is called Toronto and Houston Central, but other roads appear in the game. The map is huge and spawns across multiple regions and biomes, from the snowy tundras to the hot deserts, with tons of locomotive, rolling stock, and secrets to be found. The game was pretty popular around 2020 and 2021, but ever since 2022 and beyond, the game has waned and eventually dropped to 0 visits. Used Bubblehead would eventually cancel development for the game in the description, and since then the game hasn't been touched since, although it still remains open and functional to this day. Something I want to add here is that this game is probably the main reason why I got into Roblox Studio and got so serious about building trains and train games in general. Back in the day, I was playing around 2020 and was driving a long train over the train car length. There was some admins in there and they began deleted my train because I was breaking the rules. I got angry and decided that day I would make my own row scale game with no rules on the car or engine length. The game would eventually become Big City Row Scale and was released in June of 2020, and while it was never a success, being filled with mostly free models and low quality stuff, it helped propel me into making more and more stuff, and eventually I would release Row Scale British Railway, which is still my biggest hit to this day. So, from UCS to Use Bubblehead and the rest of the team behind Row Scale Tulip, thank you. Thank you for inadvertently pushing me to make my own games and develop my skills, and Roblox Studio became who I am today. And I am also sorry for breaking the rules back in 2020, but in my defense, I was going to park that line of tankers there. There was just a lot of traffic up ahead, so I had no chance. Well, that was a very long trip down memory lane. Thank you all so much for watching this final installment of the Dead Roblox Train Game series. I had a blast making these videos for you guys and getting to see all the feedback you guys gave, along with games that you all suggested. Special thanks goes out to Unita50 for giving info on the Polar Express game, and Young Buies and Trains4472 for helping me massively with the Solway 1985 section. Their socials will be linked in the description down below. Now, I would love to continue this series, but Roblox recently dropped an update which locks any game that's unrated because of reasons I will not be going into, but it's due to the safety issues they've been having recently. This stupid update has effectively locked hundreds, if not thousands, of old Roblox train games, meaning that those games are pretty much lost media, since many of those who own the games left Roblox or got banned, and thus, these games are lost to time. So sadly, the series will be ending here unless Roblox reverts the update. Anyway, tune in next time when I cover all of Greg Tame's old games, but until then, thanks for watching and have a great day. I'll see you all later.